Well, let's bring you up to speed with the latest conversation, because a lot has been going on within the office of the Special Prosecutor. And we've had Martin Amidu come out publicly and to complain about lack of facilities and logistics that he needs to do his work. But before he came out publicly, apparently he had written a letter to the Attorney General. And we've had a lot of conversation on that. Kojo is here. Kojo. Now, we had discussed this when he came out publicly on the subject, but it also brought to the fore the commitment of the states in tackling the issue of corruption, and we talked about it.
We did, and the letter that has come out recently is actually a letter he wrote to the Chief of Staff. He copied in the Attorney General, he copied in the chair of his own board at the Office of the Special Prosecutor, and he also copied in the Finance Ministry. It appears that his current tussle is with the Finance Ministry, and the release of funds for his office to be functional. And he catalogues the events, talking about when he was first appointed, given a V8 and a Nissan, and then a deputy was appointed and given a saloon car, and that's it. And the entire Office of the Special Prosecutor is using these three vehicles for everything, including delivering letters and so forth. And then he talks about how everyone is sharing his personal secretary. This is problematic even for security purposes. So yes, it appears that he is feeling the weight of the lack of resources and is calling on help from the presidency. But I think there's a lot to be learned from this, and we're glad that we're able to speak to some guests about this morning. Edem Senanu happens to be the executive secretary, I believe, of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition group, Citizen Movement Against Corruption. We also get the opportunity to join lawyer Martin Kebu via Skype, forgive me, and he's in France at the moment. So good morning, gentlemen. Very good of you both to make time to speak to us.
Good morning, and just a slight correction.
Hello, gentlemen. Good morning. I hope you can hear us.
Corruption. I can hear you.
Wonderful.
Can you hear me?
I think perhaps Mr. Edem Senanu will be a good point to begin. Mr. Senanu, we understand how important the Office of the Prosecutor, Special Prosecutor is, and how much of a political point government has made of the fact that they've even created this office. But if Martin Amidu is to be believed, then it is simply an office in name alone. It's a shell of an institution that is yet to be capable of doing anything on behalf of the people of Ghana.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we should take Martin very seriously, because he's not somebody to be toyed with. His views and opinions on issues are usually ones that nobody should disregard. So yes, absolutely, it appears that that office currently is just a shell and doesn't have what it takes to be able to deliver what they expect.
But Mr. Senanu, we've all seen Martin Amidu in action. Even with nothing, he's able to do a great deal. So in real terms, is there genuinely nothing he can do right now, even in spite of his constraints? Is there no investigation he could begin? Is there no result he could show for the time that he has been in office?
Well, on different platforms, Martin has made it clear that he's had different forms of challenges. He did indicate that he had requested documentation on some cases from some sectors, but the bureaucracy was not making the necessary documentation available. And in that instance, he talked about applying common sense to try and get some actions and some traction, but he was not being supported, nor was the work being facilitated. So if you juxtapose that against the fact that he doesn't seem to be getting the resources, and also the LI that fully empowers him is not yet in place, then I think we must take him seriously.
Now, I want to bring in Mr. Pigbo at this point, and Expanding the same idea of what can be done in the meantime, because I don't think the Special Prosecutor's Office is the only office or the only government institution that is starved of funds. We hear about this all the time, and yet we expect them to somehow be able to do something with the little that they have been given. So, for example, if people are refusing to give him information, why not take them to court? The law is on his side, isn't it?
Just about 10 minutes.
So put it in context, that's quite a common problem.
30 minutes.
Even before we continue, it's important for us to know that Mr. Amidu himself is not making the point that he's unable to start anything until he gets the resources he's asking for. No, that's not the point he's making at all. So you see that I even keep mentioning that when he was even enumerating his problems, he enumerated the lack of manpower, the human resources, way ahead of the lack of the airline. So it is the case that, and even before we go in further, let's put on record that the government has assured that within a week, he will get quite a substantial part of the request that he's made. The Deputy Attorney General made this point on Thursday evening on a PM Express. I was part of that program. And then he said, apart from what Ms. Amidu will be given in a week, there will be further supply of his needs, so to call, in 3 weeks. So that is to make the point that he will be finished with his request in 2 tranches, one within a week. So that week, would, the latest will be this Thursday, and then the next tranche will be within 3 weeks. So let's keep those dates in mind and keep fingers crossed that the government will deliver. And actually, I mean, it's good to think positively that they will deliver, because the Deputy AG has a lot of credibility. I would not lightly put aside the promise that he's made. So that is it. So in the next 1 week and in the next 3 weeks, we would expect a lot of, what do you call it, resources for Ms. Amidu. Good. But moving forward, apart from that, as you rightly stated, he said he had about 4 investigators and 1 extra prosecutor, I think, at the forum. That's what he said, right? So it's the case that he's currently working on a number of issues. So perhaps it would have helped Mr. Amidu to indicate those ones, so that the government, so that the people would also have a better picture. You say, yes, it didn't help much that we only had a litany of the complaints. But all the same, you know how much we love Mr. Amidu and how we want to give him all the support to succeed. Then on the matter of the airline, it's the case that, as I've stated, a lot of the issues that are to be dealt with in the airline are already in the Parent Act. You see, that's the Office of Special Prosecutor Act. Yes, so the Parent Act has catered for quite a number of them, okay? So that it means that it's not the case that Mr. Amidu is not able to work because he doesn't have an ally to work now. No, that's not the case. It is not the case that he's unable to commence any investigations. He's unable to go to court. He's unable to freeze any assets. He's unable to apply for confiscation of assets and all that because there is no ally. That's not the case he's making at all. Far from it. Indeed, even though Section 78 of the Act provides that within 90 days of his assumption of office, the ally should be put in place, the contents of the ally are not what would now open the doors to investigations and to all the other activities. Far from it. Of course, we also very much appreciate that the ally would immensely help. But you see, Kojo, what we are doing is that, we are communicating. So we need to be very clear. We need to have a scale of preference. that what is happening? Is it the case that the LI is number one, without which Mr. Amidu has been more or less strangled so that the work cannot go on? This is what we are paying to point that that is not the case. So that should not be brought as number one, because, you know, lay people don't understand. Amongst all these things we've stated, as soon as a lot of lay people hear that, oh, he says he doesn't even have an ally, then the impression is created that then no work is going on, which is not the case at all. So that's very crucial, because as you yourself, Kojo, you even introduced, a lot of government institutions are coping without allies. Yes, that's not to denigrate the importance of the allies. We are only putting the matter in perspective that his work can go on whilst efforts are made to bring the ally into fruition. And indeed, it's also been promised that as soon as Parliament resumes in October, the LI will be laid. For an LI, you need 21 continuous certain days for it to mature. That is to say, if they lay it and then no parliamentarian has an issue, then after 21 certain days, not 21 ordinary days, but certain, every day that Parliament works for 21 days, if no objections are raised, then the LI will become law. So all said and done, I think that it's not that bad. With hindsight, you could say that perhaps the government should have come out faster. As soon as he made his complaints, they should have also come out with the promise that they've made. But it looks like they came late. By then, this subject had already engaged so much public attention and, you know, or getting a lot of us worried. But it turned out that, well, in a week's time, a lot will be done. And also in 3 weeks' time, much more will be done. So let's watch these benchmarks critically, or these dates.
Right. Now, Mr. Kwebu, before I bring back Mr. Senanu into the conversation, let me just ask your impression of this. First of all, in this letter that we've seen, the letter he wrote to the Chief of Staff, Mr. Amidu is outlining a number of frustrations that he has encountered along the way. His office falls under the Ministry of Justice. So that's his ministry. He's gone to them trying to get some help around the logistics provision situation, because they do have a budget. So he was hoping to tap into that budget to help provide for his office. They didn't help him with that. The finance ministry, he's gone there several times. They've sent him back and forth on this same issue of getting some money to set up the office. And then he talks about the president's appointees refusing to give him money. Does this paint for you a picture of a government that is not yet, or perhaps is deliberately not on board with seeing the office of the special prosecutor actually doing work? Did they do this simply as a political exercise, but not commit to physically seeing it succeed?
Well, Kojo, to be candid, I don't have enough information. You know, the letter alone is not sufficient to make a conclusion or to come to a conclusion that the government is not committed. You know, they say every coin has two sides. Indeed, as I've stated, if you just suppose the complaint Mr. Amidu is made, and the fact that the government says in a week's time a lot is coming, and in 3 weeks,
but it's already been more than half a year. You know, so if the government is now telling us that in a week's time they are going to release funds that they should have released at the very beginning of this process 6 months ago, then is that also not telling you something about the government's dedication or lack of it?
Well, okay, yes, you have a very salient point. That is an indicator. But let me add this, that, you know, we are learning, because often we don't have all the facts. We're not privy to all the meetings. But you can see that there've been meetings and there've been attempts. So let me further bring in another fact that I think would help us to perhaps hold our judgment for a bit more before we come to a conclusion as to government commitment. When the Deputy Attorney General rang into the program on PM Express last Thursday, I was on it with Nana Ansakwa, okay, as the host. He indicated that they have since sat down with the Director of Budget and seen that there is a way to expedite the release of funds. You know, in government, there's this program called Give Miss. So that's the procedure to get funds out of the system, and it takes quite some time. So Mr. Penka said they had sat down with the director of budget and seen how they could fast track, despite the normally laborious or long process under the gift mix. So because of that, I would hold judgment for now, okay, so that we would observe. But could you, let's add this, that we all knew that government bureaucracy is slow. That is how come that when Mr. Amidu was appointed, we're very excited because we knew that for him, he won't take that slow bureaucracy for an answer. And that's exactly what he's doing. So to be candid, it means that we all saw this. Because remember, even when the appointment was made, we came there, we're very excited, fairy tale appointment, so much fanfare. Yes, because we knew that he has what it takes to fight the system, to move faster. So that's exactly what's playing out.
Right.
So let's keep supporting. And then just briefly, on the matter of those not cooperating, as you rightly stated, under the Act, if somebody refuses to give him information, so you are talking about sections 69 thereabout and also 73 and other provisions, he can prosecute people who conceal information from him or people who deliberately frustrate his efforts. So I was even making the point that those people should be careful. Perhaps he's warning them because under the law, he can take all those persons to task. But normally, it's reasonable that he would first complain, that he would first give notice that what they're doing is not appropriate, so that subsequently when he's taking them on, nobody would say that, oh, he's been too zealous. That's to say he's exercising too much within a short time. Right. So let's keep looking positive.
Right. Let's bring in Mr. Edem Senanu on this point of government institutions that are not cooperating. In fact, Martin Amidu describes them not as government institutions, but as the president's appointees who are not cooperating. I think that is significant. And I want to ask specifically about that. Martin Pegu has pointed out that, look, the law is on his side. He could most definitely, take them to court and, there can be sanctions leveled against them. But what does it mean if you are the head of an institution or a president's appointee, the president who has said that he's committed to fighting corruption, and then you are asked for information by the Office of the Special Prosecutor and you don't provide it? What is the implication? Are these appointees telling us that they don't want to help in the fight against corruption?
Is it me?
Mr. Edem Senanu is the one I'm hoping to hear from on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. I first want to respectfully disagree with my good friend Martin. Says that the ally is not necessarily a key thing that Martin Senior Amidu needs to act. Most of us who have interacted with him find that he's a stickler for process and for ensuring that you have the necessary legal framework in place in order to act. Martin would not want to begin to engage and lose and issues because he's not properly clothed with the full gamut of what he needs. And so take the LI issue equally seriously. Again, I think that about how long it is taking government to him, that's a key point. If the man wrote, and we are now seeing that letter, and in spite of that letter, no actions were taken, now he's come to the public space to speak about it, then obviously Martin was trying to be a little more conservative in his approach to these things. Big president and he would act very expeditiously on these matters. And I'm quite sure that the position would have been extremely surprised that after all the various assurances that were given him on his appointment, nothing concrete had been done to resolve the logistics resources and what. So yes, I agree with you that what are the president's men doing? I mean, somebody ought to have been coordinating this to the extent that it doesn't take a into the public space to tell the citizens of Ghana getting traction. So yes, I hear Martin Jr. Talk about the assurances that have been given by the Deputy Attorney General, but I think it's a bit given the excitement we all had, because we know that the caliber and the competency of the man we had appointed generated results by this point.
So, I mean, what would your prescription be? You are the watchdogs. You have been paying attention to see whether this office makes a difference in the fight against corruption. It's been half a year now. What's your verdict?
I think my verdict is that media and civil society should keep on this spot for the next, make sure that this process comes to a end where the office of the special to act. I think that when we take the spotlight off, you never know, sleep again. So I'm excited at the current president's men, and my take on it is that civil society and media ought to keep on this issue so that we can help make sure that this process comes to a logical conclusion.
Now, Mr. Kwegbu, you made the point that perhaps we should give the government benefit of the doubt for the next week or so, since they say they will deliver in that time. But I remember the 2018 budget. When it was read, it included allocation for the Office of Special Prosecutor. Give miss or no give miss? Should it take half a year for the office to get its money? Oh, I'm told that we have to reconnect with Mr. Martin Kwegbu. So perhaps, Edem, you can give me your take on this. It was in the budget. So can you think of a possible reason why half a year down the line, the funds for the office could still be delayed?
In October, we're not in June. so we're not talking 6 months, you're talking 9 months.
Ah, well, thank you.
So
yeah.
It should not take, it should not take for this to happen. And that's what is worrisome, that if we can go to sleep with somebody with the type of leadership like Martin Amidu, then things are not going to be, our attention went off the ball a few minutes or months. Hopefully with media and civil society keep an eye on this, we can bring it to a logical conclusion.
What do you think Mr. Amidu will do if these frustrations continue? If he finds that he's still unable to deliver
he probably will resign.
Expectation of the public?
It's not beyond Martin Amidu, given he takes his integrity, to say that, look, I will not want to be associated with something that's working. So I think it's important that we all do what we can to support him, because he certainly wants to deliver for the people of Ghana. And for me, of person that it's very difficult to find people like him who this app passionately deliver on the various things that are required in terms of the anti-corruption from the OSP's point of view.
Stay with us. I just want to bring Roland in on this, because this is a real possibility that Martin Amidu, in protecting his reputation, could throw his hands up after a while and say, you know what, had enough of this, and walk away.
Well, there are people who have worked with him and say, due to his ethos or the way he likes working by his ethics, he's likely to throw in the towel. That is, if he doesn't get the responses. But it is also curious to note that the commitment of the state or the government to some of those concerns that he may have been raising could also be in question. Now, particularly knowing that he's somebody who likes coming out when he feels that he doesn't have his way. The president, who is the appointee, should know, or the appointer should know that, well, that's the temperament of the man that he has in the office. In my mind, and with the few legal practitioners I've spoken to and those who are in the anti-corruption field, it looks as if that he's been trying to make headway with the appointer, with relatively those who occupy offices that need to give him the sort of help that he needs, and he's not been getting. And that's why he's come up publicly to again air his views, but also try to get some level of public sentiment on his side, so that will push forward in the anti-corruption drive.
Now, you know, this came up, Adam, when the president was in the United States. People asked him questions about the progress of the office. And his response was that he will take their concerns back to Martin Amidu. And he will go and tell Martin Amidu that people are concerned. Are we seeing perhaps a sign of the president seeking to detach himself from the outcome of this exercise? That he will simply pass on the information and the demands of the people, but he is not taking any responsibility for whether or not this office succeeds?
I didn't say so. I'll tell you what. For those of us in the anti-corruption fight, we've met with the president over the course of the last 2 years about 3 times. And each time, I have been struck by how, without adequate information, our president may not take the actions that are required to move various issues forward. We've had areas where, when we talked about the right to information bill, we had to push forward and say, look, we need a deadline. And when we continued arguing about it for about 15, 20 minutes, the president issues an instruction, and then you seem to get other people getting on track. So I think we should accept that our president may not have all the facts and information regarding the processes and procedures that must be followed to get an office like this fully empowered and able to deliver. It is those who are around him, his advisors within the necessary sectors, who ought to feed him with the right information so that he knows what ought to be done and he can track it and then give, very informed responses. I have a feeling he may not have the full purview of what has gone on so far, and then those in responsibility to make this happens and happens quickly, probably just not done their job. And this is where the president ought to step in and say, look, up your game, deliver over the course of the week so that all of us know that this is settled. I don't think that he necessarily is trying to shift the blame. Nobody appoints a Martin Amidu without action.
Well, I guess from what you're saying, then it's back to these same appointees. It's up to them to make sure the president knows what he must know in order to take the action he must take. But do you think Martin Amidu should release the names of these appointees who have refused to cooperate? Should the public know that these are the ones who are not working with Martin Amidu to fight corruption?
I believe so. I mean, good governance is not readily supplied. It must be constantly demanded. Of a thriving democracy is surveillance by a citizen. That information is required to work, and we don't have some appointees think that whether it is for a particular reason, perhaps there is a party agenda or not, it will citizens and media working hard. This office comes to deliver the results that we expect.
So, all in all, how would you rate Martin Amidu's performance under the circumstances?
Far away from rating it. I think that he eventually spoke up, because many of us were very worried because there was nothing months, going 9 months, worried. And so when Daniel Domlevo took the bull by visit, we began to think of writing. Indeed, we've written to him to see whether we can pay a visit. Then before that could happen, he's spoken up, which is important, because otherwise we begin to wonder, has he lost the... and so I'm glad he's spoken, and I think that is what will suffice for now. Let's give it, see what the presidency and the state does, and see what actions he can take for the... Then we can give a meaningful and informed assessment.
Thank you, Mr. Senanu. Edem Senanu is the co-chair of the Anti-Corruption Coalition Group, Citizens Movement Against Corruption. And
we should also mention that we were joined from France via Skype by Martin Pebo, who is a legal practitioner. Yeah. But and I know that just yesterday or 2 days ago, we're speaking about, on Friday, we're speaking about what the commitment and the effort is. And I was arguing from that point, whether it was layman or that, well, as a citizen vigilante, he had the opportunity and, well, even the commitment to do the things that he did. But you said he has been appointed with a certain regulation, and the act enables him to have so and so, etc. The thing is, we have corruption that has consolidated in our country. It's in every sphere of our endeavor, whether in the public service or in the private sector, or even in the homes or wherever we find ourselves. And if we have a special prosecutor who is supposed to deal with some of these things, it means that we have to go above board to provide him with the best comfort as we can to ensure that he's able to deliver to the optimum. Now, apart from providing him with the physical things or the logistics, there also needs to be that commitment from the heads of those institutions that either have been appointed by the president or perhaps are of the state, so that we are seen to be not only of the people but also as government having that needed commitment or attachment to ensuring that we are enabling the work of the special prosecutor to go on. If you ask me, we're told, well, you were saying 6 months, apparently it's 9 months since
9 months, yeah. It's actually,
and 9 months means that we're just left with 3 years, 3 more months for a year to be up, for us to have a whole prosecutor in office for 1 whole year. And to take
not one case.
And to take a look at all the things that he could have done if he had the logistics. I think that it begs the question whether we're committed. Look, nobody wants to steal for free. Nobody steals and leave trails. So if you want to uncover somebody's corrupt act, it means that you have to go down the earth to unearth it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Now, just as we wrap up, one thing I noticed in the letter that was released yesterday is that he was seconded several members of staff, including investigators. I don't know how you felt about that, but reading that the Ghana Police Service sent him 3 investigators, I thought that the idea was that he would handpick the people that he wants to work with so that he can trust them. But if he's been assigned people, then what control does he have over whether they are corrupt themselves or even competent?
Exactly.
But we must move on.
That even question the attached word independent.
Indeed. Well,